look, Adam, I'll always say this. I was never the best drummer. I could play the song. You'll never think, oh, that guy messed up or he did something wrong. That's never going to be the case. However, there are plenty of better drummers than me. But
Right.
my superpower was being in the right place at the right time, always networking, building up my reputation, building those relationships, being in the right place at the right time. Like I realized that lightning struck, and so to try to replicate that, my thought was always, well, I just got to be the last drummer that everybody sees, so that when someone asks them if they needed a drummer, they would instantly think of me.
Hi, my name is Adam Freeman. Welcome to Comic Industry Insiders, where our goal is to get to know the people behind the scenes of the comics industry and to see what we can learn from them for your career or your business in comics. Before we get into this week's guest, can I just get you to do the thing where you hit like and subscribe? I don't want to talk about mashing things or, slamming anything down, but man, we don't like the algorithm any more than you do, but it really does help other people to find the show. All right. Jordan Plosky. Yeah, Jordan always wins. This can be annoying when he's your friend and he tells you his plans and you tell him it will never work. Sure, you're rooting for him, but who likes to be wrong? As a serial entrepreneur, Jordan has successfully launched and sold the digital comics platform Comic Blitz, and most recently launched the comics crowdfunding platform Zoop. Since our conversation, Zoop has had many wins, including their first licensing deal with a game and their ongoing sales platform on their site. They also successfully did a crowdfunding equity raise, which you should definitely be part of. We mentioned that in the interview. We talk a lot about Jordan's history, the brilliance of what Zoop has become, and why you should always be the last drummer that someone has met. Jordan is a talented musician, leader, entrepreneur, and friend. Friends and neighbors, Jordan Plosky. Yeah, I think, when you put together a list of the people who have changed kind of the face of comics and who have participated in trying to think about what the industry can be and like an experiment, I mean, your name is always going to be on that. So I'm just so happy to have you on to kind of talk about your, this meandering career that got you here. So tonight, if it's okay with you, we're going to go through a bunch of the places of your career in comics, and how long you and I have known each other, and what's kind of led you to this place where you don't get to sleep much. You just, all you do is work, right?
For the most part, yeah. And if I'm not working, then I'm stressing about working, which is keeping me from sleeping. So I'm sure there are plenty of people who could relate to that.
I think so.
But yeah, thank you for those kind words, man. It's nice to have some sort of recognition like that, where like someone actually realizes, oh, here's someone who's actually trying to do something good to push the medium forward. That's kind of always been my thing, I think, because I love comics, but I can't write, I can't draw, so I do what I can to sort of contribute to something that I love, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense to me as someone who can't write or draw and has, figured out a way to make it in this, do everything else just so that those people who can write and draw can just do that, right? That's kind of the goal, right?
Yeah, I want comics to keep going, and if I could help be a part of that's awesome to me.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Well, I was hopeful to kind of, dig into where you come from. One of the things that I love about this process is that people like you who I've known, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 years, something. How long has it been? It's been forever, right?
Well, oh
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe since like 2011, 2012 with the whole wearing the t-shirt on stage thing.
That's right. Wearing the t-shirt on stage? What did I do?
Okay, so that's my version of it.
Okay.
So all right, so we go back to I met you at Ed's store in Collector's Paradise. That's the first time that we met in person.
That's right.
But before that, what led up to that was
This is Ed Greenberg owns a place called Collector's Paradise in Pasadena and I think a couple other places in and around LA. Yeah.
I think he has 3 stores, 3 Collector's Paradises,
Yeah.
Pasadena, Winnetka, and North Hollywood. So
That's right. There you
plugs
go.
to Ed. But you guys had a Harbinger 1 release party at Ed's store in 2012 for, so, the re-release of Harbinger, number
That's
1. This
right.
is the re-release of the entire Valiant line, in 2012. So leading up to that, I saw like a bunch of stuff on social media that Valiant's back, and all this stuff is happening, and no joke, that was part of like what like reinvigorated my love in comics, because I was such a Valiant fan as a kid.
Yeah.
But so I had reached out because at the time I was a touring musician. I know you know this,
Yeah.
and I was trying to like use my sway to get some free stuff, and I was like, hey, if I wear a shirt on stage, in front of 10,000 people, will you send me some free stuff? And sure enough, you guys sent me a shirt. I wore it on stage, took a picture of like me and the band basically in front of the entire crowd. So I had it on like while I was performing the entire time. And then I got those 3 hardcovers. I think it was Archer and Armstrong and Exo Manowar and Harbinger, I believe. Those black,
Right.
short
Those
black dust jacket hardcovers that
those
kind
were
of,
the reprint ones that that Valiant did before we started in 2012, right?
yes,
Yeah, yeah,
correct.
yeah. That's awesome. And
So,
the band was
well, that band was a group called Big Time Rush. That was
right.
a Nickelodeon artist. They sort of did that whole like Lizzie McGuire, Hannah Montana formula where they'd film a TV show about a group of musicians, and then they'd make an album, and then they'd go on tour performing the music that was played on the TV show, basically. So I was the drummer in that band, and then when I came into the store, by the way, I had no idea who you were. I didn't know who Dinesh was. Josh Dysart was there, and Ed was
That's
there.
right.
And I remember kind of like introducing myself, like, hey, I'm that guy, you know, like I'm that guy that we did that thing, you gave me a shirt and I wore it on stage, like that's me. And so that was the first time I met you and Dinesh,
Yeah.
and like I have my Harbinger 1. I'm like passing it around to get signatures and stuff like that. I give it to Ed because I don't know who he is. He's sitting behind the table with Dysart, like
That's
he's
right.
the creator.
Yeah. That sounds like it. Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
and he's like laughing at me. He's like, "You don't want my signature?" I'm like, okay, strange man." I didn't know, like I'm supposed to know who he was, kind of thing, I
That
guess.
sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
that was the first time that like we really had encountered one another. And then, sure enough, a couple of years later, when I went to start my first business, you and I had some conversations.
So, all right. So yeah, well, let's go back a little further if you don't mind, because I'd like
Oh,
to go even back further from there, like from before we met. So, we have a little research ninja named Anthony Militano who helps out on this show, and he goes and he gives me so much. And by the way, this is the first time that he's done the research for somebody and come back to me with questions, because he's in the middle of getting his MBA, and he has so many questions for you. So we're gonna get some of these are going to be actually from him. But he
okay.
tells me you graduated at NYU in 2001, and you interned at MTV and VH1 during
Yes.
that period. What were you studying for?
So when I was in high school, I didn't even want to go to college. I was in a band and I wanted to tour.
Right.
And my parents, I've never seen them so angry. They're like, "You're going to school. You're going to college." And so I applied to schools that had music business courses, music business degrees, and I was like, all right, if I can't just be a musician, I still want to be in the music industry. And of course, this is like 98, 99, sort of before Napster came along and literally destroyed the entire music industry. So,
Right. Right. So
you
here's
know,
everything you learned, kid. Let's just throw the whole fucking book out the door now, right?
well,
Yeah.
basically, digital music changed everything that I learned in school. Like what I learned was obsolete instantly. But
Yeah.
while I was there, so I was at NYU, which is downtown New York, and MTV was in Times Square, and so I landed an internship at MTV Radio. Um, and whenever people would come in to do like TRL and do like other on-camera interviews, they would also come to do an interview for MTV Radio, and then we would clip up those interviews and send them out to like syndicated radio stations all across the country.
Right.
So, and we would cover like the MTV VMAs, and we would cover like other events, but like for the most part, it was like people coming in to the studio for interviews, and we were like part of that junket circuit kind of thing. So, as a 21-year-old, like I'm meeting all these, famous musicians, and I'm like, this is the greatest. And spent a year in that department, loved it. They loved me, I loved them. And then I went to VH1 radio to do sort of like the same thing there. I think one of the people from MTV moved over to VH1, kind of took me with them. But unfortunately, this is always, it's a weird thing to discuss, but like one of the catalysts in my life was 9/11, probably like a lot of people, because I went into college with enough credits to graduate one semester early. So
Okay.
instead of graduating in May of 2002, I graduated in December 2001, 2 months after 9/11 happened and destroyed basically like the New York economy and the entertainment industry. So thinking that I would just graduate and walk right into a job, like an entry-level job somewhere at Viacom, Paramount, somewhere in there, they're slashing jobs left and right. Hundreds of people are being let go. I don't know what to do with myself. I wind up, moving back home to Long Island and working at a nightclub, doing like, as like a stage manager, production manager, just like helping, this nightclub kind of put on live performances and, like going to get food for the kitchen, like doing all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, continuing to play drums, being in bands and being sort of like a house musician at a studio on Long Island. And long story short, one night, the guy who was running the studio gets a call saying, "Hey, we need a drummer for a tour. Who do you got?"
Wow.
I was just the guy that was there. Like lightning struck. That's really all that happened. And I got my first tour.
So based on that, what you're saying to me is you went to business school, you went to get your degree, and so that you could be involved in the business of music instead of just playing in bands the whole time. And as a result of that, had you been playing in bands the whole time, you would have been able to bypass the whole goddamn thing. That was your career anyway.
The funny thing is, no one's ever pointed that out to me like that before. But I guess you're kind of right. Look, man, it's so hard to like connect those dots and like try to find reasons why certain things happen or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I was in the right place at the right time.
Right.
I was a good enough player. I got a call. It was literally a call on like a Monday or Tuesday being like, "Hey, we need a drummer for a show on Thursday across the country." Like this was in Anaheim. I'm in New York. The show's in Anaheim on Thursday. So I had to learn the set, no rehearsals, go play a show. And then that kind of started my music career.
Yeah. I've heard this especially from recording artists. Like you get drawn everywhere depending on what you're doing, but especially in touring as well. I've heard this as well. Like once you're established, once you have that network down, you just stay busy everywhere all the time if you want, right?
So it's not quite that simple. So
Sure.
there's a ton of parallels to being a freelance independent contractor as a musician, as there are to being a freelance independent contractor as a comic book creator. So
Right.
there's a lot of advice that I like to give because I've been through something very similar to what a lot of people are going through. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, look, Adam, I'll always say this. I was never the best drummer. I could play the song. You'll never think, oh, that guy messed up or he did something wrong. That's never going to be the case. However, there are plenty of better drummers than me. But my
Right.
superpower was being in the right place at the right time, always networking, building up my reputation, building those relationships, being in the right place at the right time. Like I realized that lightning struck, and so to try to replicate that, my thought was always, well, I just got to be the last drummer that everybody sees, so that when someone asks them if they needed a drummer, they would instantly think of me. So I'm going out every night. I'm on the Sunset Strip. I'm watching bands play. I'm always, networking, and that was my strength. So I jumped from gig to gig to gig to gig, and the thing that I like to tell anyone in a creative field who's freelance, who's an independent contractor, it doesn't matter how good you are if you never get out of the house. If nobody knows about it, you can have the best book in the world, but if you can't tell people about it, or if you're not building those relationships in that network, if you're not able to kind of express what you're doing out in public, that's just such a huge part of it. It really
Yeah.
is such a huge part of, and I don't even necessarily mean like you have to go pitching to the major publishers or anything like that. You could certainly build a fan base and a career, on your own independently if you want. Take your destiny into your own hands. But there's the side that I feel like a lot of creators don't want to take on, is that marketing and promotion and sales, and like, doing the social media, building an email list, all of that. Like, the thing that I didn't realize until I got out of the music industry and started my first business was, oh, I was already an entrepreneur as a freelancer.
Yeah.
I just never called myself an entrepreneur, but all those same skills of grinding it out and finding the next gig, and negotiating contracts, and all of that, that was all incredibly entrepreneurial. So those skills that every creator has transfer over into potentially just like running a business as well.
I absolutely goes with my experience. It goes with my experience of watching you, watching every major creator I can think of. Before you see them like suddenly become an overnight success, you see them at every convention, right? You see them out there at, smiling, meeting people. I love that idea though, being the last drummer you see. I think I'm gonna hang on to that one. That's
It
a
makes
gem.
Right, but it makes sense, because really, Adam, if someone says to you like, "Hey, I need a social media person," right? Like, the first person you're going to think of is literally the last person you encountered that
Yeah,
that fills that role. So
exactly.
it's just being out there, putting yourself out there, networking. And I'm not saying, you know, it's not, you don't have to kiss ass. You just be yourself. Like, just, nobody likes, can we curse, or like a foul
Yeah,
language,
of
or,
course. Yeah.
there's definitely like a no assholes rule, like, be cool,
Sure.
but, and if someone's treating you like you're a little person and they're, so high and mighty, you don't have to pursue that. That'll come around in time.
Yeah,
You know, the thing is, you have to be good to everybody, because you never know when those stations kind of change in life.
they
So
will shift. They
just
absolutely will.
don't be an asshole is like rule number one.
Well, you worked with while you were doing well during your musician and music director. I guess that was a title that you had at some point, right? You worked with some pretty big names here. We've got Miley Cyrus, Everclear, Perry Farrell. Like you, I mean, you got
Yes.
around, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. It's like he has a copy of my resume. I'm not sure if all this is on my LinkedIn, or if he literally like found a copy of my resume somewhere, because this isn't necessarily like public information, but he found it. So I'll give him credit. Yeah. Look, music director was essentially looking out for the other band members. So like, as a hired musician, as like a freelancer, you know, you play for an artist, and a lot of times these artists are hiring their entire band. So guitar players, bass players, keyboard players, you know, as the music director, you're sort of like the person in charge of the band for
Right.
the artist. You're that point person. Think of, essentially you're the editor, right? Like, you're the one wrangling and handling schedules and contracts and negotiations for everybody. So that, that music director was sort of like the lead musician of the group.
Oh, that's amazing. What? So I mean, obviously, that experience has been. How much of that experience, how much of that grind, that networking, that being the last drummer that people saw, how much of that came from your experience, like really focusing on business when you were in school instead of just being a drummer, or do you just think that you came to that naturally?
I think I came to it naturally. I think I just realized,
Yeah.
I think I realized that I'm not the best drummer. So where can I beat these other guys?
Yeah.
And it comes naturally to me. It does. Like, clearly I don't have a problem speaking,
Right.
or communicating with people. So that's one of those things. I'm not going to say I have no shame. That's not it. But like, I don't have a problem not knowing, like recognizing someone that I know I should speak to. Even if I don't have an in, I don't have a problem like walking over to them, sticking out my hand and introducing myself, where I think like, 90% of people might not be able to do something like that. So I just, yeah, I'm able to network, I'm able to communicate, and that has certainly served me well in business.
All right, so I meet you, and you see what we're doing in comics, and you're like, "Fuck yeah, man! I'm going to comics." That's what it's right. Is that obvious? It's meeting me that made that career shift for you. Is that what it
Well,
is?
I met this sexy bitch named Adam Freeman, and, and changed my life overnight. Well, so really what happened was, and it's funny, man. I don't generally talk about like my music career on like comics related things, but what happened was I was touring. I was away from home more of the year than I was actually home. And I
Right.
had gotten married, I had a baby, and this was not conducive to actually being a husband and a father anymore.
Right.
And I the whole thing I was just talking about, going out and networking, which when you have a baby that is up 3 or 4 times a night and wakes up for the day at like 5 in the morning, like
Yeah.
I can't go out until 2 in the morning anymore.
Right.
So it became harder to maintain the career with the family, and I had a choice to make. So I chose to get off the road because realistically, I wasn't happy on the road anymore. Like I was missing my family. Like
Yeah.
I had already lived the dream, man. Like I had lived the dream. I was fulfilled. Like no regrets about leaving that career. But I'm not someone that could just go clock into a job and like be psyched. So while I did have to go get a job, like a civilian type job, I started thinking about like, well, the music industry is shrinking and shrinking. It's getting more competitive to find work there. What's my other passion? And the answer was comics. And I had started thinking about ways to break into comics. But at this point, I'm like already over 30 years old. And the answer I got from so many people about how to get into comics was to intern.
Oh. Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I can't intern. Like what?
Yeah.
I'm not 18. I'm not like fresh out of college. So I wound up meeting someone on Craigslist. I know that sounds like a shady story that's a like shady way to start a story. I met this guy on Craigslist, and he was starting a subscription based digital comics line. And this is where I sort of got my foot in the door. Um, I'm not going to give you the name. I'm not going to tell you like what the name of the company or the name of the guy, but
Okay.
I kind of wound up building this guy's roster for him, getting a bunch of creators to sign up and provide content, and even talking to publishers and everything like that. And at a certain point, he wanted me to like turn over all of these contacts that I had made on his behalf. And I was like, well, like that's all the value that I bring to like what this company is. So I kind of came in being like, well, I want to be a part of this. Like, cut me in equity wise. And he asked me, he's like, well, what do you want? And I said, I don't know, 10%, which I thought was like a fair place to start, thinking he would counter me, and maybe I wind up at like anywhere from 1 to 5%, and I would have been stoked.
Right.
But his counter was no. So he he
Yeah.
he's like we have investors and we can't move any equity around or blah blah blah. Which like later on, knowing what I know now, that was like total bullshit. Like yeah, you could, if someone's adding value to your company, you
Yeah.
you cut them in. So anyway, that caused a rift between us. So I left that. But then my wife was just like, well, if you were doing it for him, why don't you just do it for yourself? I'm like, the thought had never occurred to me to start my own business. But so she said, do it yourself. And I was like, oh, yeah. So I started doing the market research and, sort of putting together a business plan and put together some friends and family money, found a co-founder, a CTO to help me like build this out, found my marketing person, and we have like a nice little team going. And I was, going to conventions and flying around the country and shaking hands and meeting people and negotiating contracts to license content to distribute on Comic Blitz. That was my first company, was Comic Blitz,
Yeah.
that I started in 2014. Honestly, like with like so much help and insight and guidance from you and Dinesh. Like, you guys were like my first like point of contact in the industry, really. And one of the funny things, Adam, like, you know what I'm going to say next, I
Oh,
think.
I hope I know what you're going to say. I was going to, if you weren't going to say it, I was going to cue you up for it. Go right
Look,
ahead.
but the thing was, like, this was at a time, this is before Comixology Unlimited came out, right? So there's Comixology, there's maybe like iVerse, um, maybe there's like one other digital comics company, but no one was doing subscriptions at the time. But
Right.
there were a lot that were popping up. There was like a dozen, no joke, a dozen other platforms trying to be like that subscription-based digital comics platform. And
It was a crowded marketplace. It was a
for
crowded
sure,
marketplace with a leader. Comixology just to paint the picture, it was Comixology was already like just gobbling everyone up as far as where I was sitting. Yeah.
but when we started, they hadn't been acquired by Amazon yet. When they
Right.
got acquired by Amazon, that really threw a wrench into a lot. However, I remember New York Comic Con must have been like 2015. I was talking to Adam at the Valiant booth, and I don't even remember exactly like what the words were, but it was something to the effect of like, "Dude, this is never gonna work. Like, just give it up. Like,
I
it's
think I
it
think
was
what
out
I said was
it
I
was out
think
of love. It was out of love. It wasn't like a mean like, oh dude, you don't know what the hell you're doing. Like, you suck. It wasn't like that. It was like,
oh I think what I was trying to express to you was, look, you are in a crowded marketplace, and already there's somebody who's. I mean, let's be. I'm going to tell you where I was coming from at that point.
yeah,
There were other providers that I thought were going to be a better fit for us, and the company that I was working at, Valiant, had decided to go exclusive with Comixology, and I felt like we didn't need to. I was the voice in the room that said, I don't feel like we need to go exclusive. I think we can get what we want out of them. And so I was in the room trying to like fight for other providers, which is really funny because I have Chip Mosier next week. We're going to be doing that interview here, and so I'm looking forward to telling him that story. Anyway, so like from where I was sitting, just even inside of a company like this, where I'm advocating for someone like iVerse, like it's still, even with that, with somebody on the inside, it still wasn't happening. It's still, you were still going to lose to this, this market
behemoth.
leader. Yeah,
Yes,
exactly. And
for
so
sure.
like, and that was, I was just trying to say to you, dude, I mean, are you sure? Are you sure?
Yeah,
Cause this is real. Yeah. Oh,
but the thing is, and it had the adverse effect on me. Like, it didn't scare me away. It actually like motivated me. The spite of trying to prove Adam Freeman wrong was like the fuel I needed to persevere and push forward. And because of that, we literally outlasted those other dozen companies that like went under. Um,
true.
and we wound up actually getting acquired in 2018. So,
I mean,
as an
any
entrepreneur, to have an exit under my belt is like a huge feather in the cap.
That's incredible, especially your first business, and you end up being acquired. Any acquisition is incredible. That's just such an achievement. I mean,
Thank you, man.
what's funny is I knew this story, and it wasn't until you're telling it just now that it occurs to me that you leave being a musician to basically kind of get some stability at home. And then the minute you get any sort of stability at home, you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go launch my own tech company. Where is that stability? That is not even a stable move, you
But
know?
it wasn't about stability, but at least I was home, you
Right.
know, and
Yeah.
and and I could travel a weekend here or there, to a convention to do business, and it wasn't that I was away for months at a time.
Right. Right.
So that's really what the goal was just to do something that I was happy doing and be home with my family, you know?
Yeah.
I, I was still young and stupid enough to like, and I guess a glutton for punishment to try to do my own thing, you know? It's just,
I feel you. That's, I mean, that's been the choice I've made for the last, I don't know, 10 years or so. It's just finding a way to be at home because I'm going to work, pick which 80 hours a week you want to work,
yeah.
but at least my kid is in the room, and I think that's important.
Look, I mean,
Um,
recently, like I've been doing a lot of work just on the couch, sitting there with my daughter, like watching TV, but like I'm not really watching, but at least physically, I'm spending time.
yeah.
Yeah. You know?
And I think that, I mean, they spend time seeing you do this too. I think that as a parent, maybe I'm fooling myself, but I think that we get an opportunity to model what it looks like to go after your dreams and go after your passions. And I hope that that's what comes through in the parenting.
Man, I have no idea. I hope so too, because sometimes I just think like I look like a dick, like working all the time instead of,
Yeah,
but but
there are
at
times that's
least
probably true as well, though. There's no way around that.
there, Adam, actually there is like
Is there?
you just need to like tell yourself like, hey man, I need to balance this out now. I could
Yeah,
I could stop working for an hour and eat a meal with my family, or
yeah,
like there is a balance, and I kind of learned that with the first company. Um, I really did, because the first company, man, I had no balance. Like, I was work, work, work all the time. I did what I had to do, but I wasn't necessarily present. This time around, with Zoop, I'm absolutely, present with my kid, and like she's my priority. She comes first. I'm doing all this for her. Like, what good is any of this if she's like, I have an absentee dad, or just like this guy bails on me all the time,
agreed. Hard agreed, man.
Uh,
Absolutely, I feel that. How did you? So, talk about. You said that you had some friends and family money, and you were able to get some seed together. Where did you like? Where did? How did you begin to understand that? Essentially, starting from zero. How did you? How did you begin that pitching process? Like, what was those early days like? Because you have to start from somewhere, right?
the thing is, like, you see all these entrepreneurs and tech entrepreneurs in particular, and you think to yourself like, oh well, these guys just raised like $5 million, and then they started their company on an idea, like they have no product, they have no platform to speak of, yet someone gave them, millions of dollars to create this thing that's just an idea on the back of a napkin, and you get these, I don't know if the word is, you see these people raise these insane amounts of money, and you just think that you get a little delusional thinking that you can do that too. So like, I started trying to like pitch angels without a product, um, and realized like that was not the way to go. Um, it's such a catch-22 as an entrepreneur, because you need money to make a product, but you need a product to go and raise money. So
Right.
that catch-22 sort of led me to like, hey, I need to tap into friends and family. That's like sort of the loophole in the whole, funding a startup, is
Yeah.
putting money together with people who believe in you, who want to support you. They might not be comic fans, they might not be tech fans, but
They're
they
Jordan
have
fans.
they're Jordan fans, and they have the means to support and try to say like, hey kid,
Yeah.
go get it. So yeah, I mean, I raised, a bunch of money from my parents, my brother, my mother-in-law, my aunt, uncle-in-law, like, to get things started. And we built a platform, and we had to pay for content. So we had all that money. And then, the funny thing is, we actually did an equity crowdfunding raise as well, on WeFunder in like 2017 or something like that. And we raised like another, like, I want to say like $88,000 at the time. So that kept us going for like quite a while. And,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, I had day jobs, at the same time, like I still had to like provide for my family, and, I'm dipping into savings, and, it's a mess. Being an entrepreneur is a mess. Like, in hindsight, like, how stupid.
Well, I think it It's all bricks in the wall, right? You need those bricks. You need to, if you hadn't lived through that, if you hadn't built that, and done those false starts, you wouldn't be able to do what you're doing.
That's
Um,
true.
when you're building this, are you building to sell? Are you thinking about a sale at the end?
Like you definitely think about like what's the end result here. Like me personally, I get into it thinking about like, all right, is this something that I can do that's gonna like help me retire, kind of thing, or is this something that's gonna you know help me put some money away in the bank, or like, yeah, do we sell, or is this something that's just gonna last forever, kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
when you get into it thinking like, I just want to do this,
Yeah.
but then when you start taking on investors, you have to you have to sort of have like a roadmap for a return on their investment. So
Because otherwise, they're giving you the stink eye at Thanksgiving for the rest of your life. That's
yeah,
it gets real. Yeah.
totally, yeah.
Yeah.
So the best way to get them a return on their investment is A, to sell, at a certain point, or B, the company is just so profitable that you're offering distributions, like pieces of the profit to them to sort of recoup their investment. And the third option is going public, but
Right.
like we're in comics, guys.
Yeah, the list of people who've actually had the opportunity to go public is a very very small club.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you. Uh, well, so when you start, where does this buyer come from? Like, how do you approach them? And like specifically, what are the metrics that made you attractive to them? Because there were, as you pointed out, there were plenty of people in that sector at that time, and many of them just fizzled off and went away. Right?
Yeah. Well, I think they found me. It's not like I was looking. I didn't even know at that point in like the business's life cycle that like we were, should be looking to sell, for example. But
Right.
they approached me because this was a video streaming distribution company, and they were looking to differentiate themselves from their competitors. And one of the things that they wanted to do was offer digital comics along with their digital video. So they approached me, and it wasn't necessarily just about buying us, but it was about buying comic blitz, acquiring all those licenses, and getting 10,000 comics instantly to then have all this content integrated into their platform, to have an offering that people would pay for. Because like, we think about this, right? Like, I never had Marvel, I never had DC, but I had great deals with like IDW, for example. And with IDW, we had Star Trek comics, we had My Little Pony and Transformers, and by the way, like there's Star Wars movies, excuse me, Star Trek movies, there's Transformers movies, there's Ninja Turtles. Like this company was also not getting like Star Trek on video or Transformers on video, but they're like, oh, if we have Transformers, but in comics, we could offer Transformers to people as
Right.
part of our package. So they saw the content that we had, like James Bond from Dynamite, for example, as like a big win. So they were very high on like the type of IP that we had acquired. That they were able to sort of loop into their streaming offerings. So that's what I think attracted them to us. Um, and yeah, I mean, like the whole process, not that I have anything to compare it to, but went fairly well, I think. And we benefited, my investors benefited. It wasn't the biggest exit of all time, but like we said earlier, an exit of any kind is like especially for a first timer, is like
It's a
pretty
huge
cool,
feather
man.
in your cap. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm looking at my list of research here. It looks like it says that you were projected to generate 5 million in revenue within 18 to 24 months of the deal closing. I mean, nothing to sneeze at. That's pretty.
Well, so that was a combination. I think that number is a combination of like the video and the comics,
Oh,
right?
I
So
gotcha.
because when we got acquired, I got hired by the company as well, and I was handling, um, I was essentially leading business development. So strategies to sell the content, to license what we had to other, third party vendors and outlets and distributors. So putting those deals together, in order to have wide distribution for the video and the comics. That's what those projections were.
That totally makes sense. That makes sense. Well, I mean, you're in the business development. I'm going to assume that you had a big piece of that as well. Um,
That,
so
that was all me. Yeah, that was finding partnerships and finding, um, companies that would be interested in the content that we had, and yeah, structuring those deals, closing those deals, and bringing in revenue for the company. Yeah, I mean, like one of the things that I definitely loved doing was always talking entrepreneurship, talking startups, talking business.
yeah,
Um, and what would you say was task what?
task magic.
Which it could have been, but I think they changed their name quite a few times.
Okay.
And this is an entrepreneur who essentially surpassed me. But like
Hmm.
when we had first met, he was doing sort of like networking events, and I think he had a podcast, and he was like just starting his first business, and I was already like ahead of him, sort of like on that roadmap. And
And so you
so
basically told him this is never going to work.
yeah,
It's too crowded.
I put
Why are you even bothering? And
I
he
put
had you put your picture up, and he's like, "I'm going to get that guy."
yeah, throw darts at his face. What? Uh, but no, so like someone like that, that's it was like a loose. It was like, hey man, can I put him an advisor on my LinkedIn page just so that like it looks pretty cool? He's like, yeah, cool, no worries. But at the same time, like offering plenty of good advice to get him to sort of that next level. And then, like I
Sure.
said, he surpassed me. I mean, he got some like huge like Silicon Valley angel investors and VCs. Now he doesn't talk to me anymore.
Aw.
See, it's that thing again. Better be
Yeah.
careful.
uh, all right, so I think that brings us. I mean, that we've covered a lot of ground pretty quickly, I think, and that brings us to Zoop. So, how does Zoop come together? Because this is something interesting. Is as I was looking into this, something I don't think I actually quite realized was that your partner. Actually, you tell the story, and then I'll come back in with the thing that that was found to be interesting.
Okay. Well, Zoop is a pandemic baby. Um, so after I sold my previous company and I went to work for the company that bought us, I wound up leaving there and getting another day job. As one does, I didn't really have any intentions of starting another company, in all honesty. But then the pandemic happened and we are quarantined and I'm losing my mind, and I needed something positive to focus on. Like I needed an outlet, like you probably saw it during the pandemic. Plenty of stories got written, plenty of stories got drawn, because people had the time to do these creative endeavors, and I needed that outlet. And I guess my outlet was starting another business. So, so during the pandemic, if you remember, Diamond still had a monopoly on distribution, and when they closed down, all the stores had to close down as well. Not because of Diamond, but like Diamond closed down, all the shops had to close down just because of federal regulations and whatnot. At the same time, I think AT&T had acquired Warner Brothers, and they had slashed DC's publishing output by like 25%, if I remember the number correctly. So what all of that meant was fewer opportunities and less money for creators. That's how I saw that. But then on the flip side, in the pandemic, e-commerce exploded, 10 years worth of growth in like 2 months, and crowdfunding was exploding. And I was having a lot of conversations with people that just to keep busy and hear what people are up to, what people are thinking about, what's going on in the world and in business and stuff like that. And one of those people was my now co-founder, Eric Moss. So Eric um, was at IDW for a few years, and when I had Comic Blitz, he was my point of contact at IDW. I would license content from IDW. He was my guy, and we were having conversations, and he was like, "Well, I might start consulting people on their Kickstarters, um, and like working as like a campaign manager or a project manager, because he has some experience doing that for IDW." And even during that time, I, I don't remember exactly the timing of everything, but Eric's big feather in his cap is that he was the campaign manager for Berserker, the Keanu Reeves Kickstarter that was essentially the number one comics crowdfunding campaign of all time until it was dethroned by Good Omens. So,
Right.
we hung our hat on that a lot when we started out. Like, hey, this guy ran the number one campaign of all time, But, he was talking about going and consulting for people. And we just started talking about like all the things that you would do as a consultant and all the sort of like pain points that creators have when it comes to crowdfunding. Like crowdfunding
Yeah.
is great. I love what it does. It democratizes, putting your content out there, right? Like it removes gatekeepers and barriers to entry, but there are still a lot of hurdles that creators have to overcome in order to self-publish or crowdfund. So we kind of took a look at that and realized like, well, you still have to figure out how to market your campaign and your book. You still have to figure out like a printer. And if you're going to offer anything other than your comic, you need, other manufacturers for like pins and stickers and trading cards and art prints or whatever else it is that you want to do. And then the big hurdle that most people have with crowdfunding is the fulfillment.
Yep.
So we realized like, oh, if we were a full service provider, we could that's huge. We could make it easier than ever, and we could actually have more people crowdfunding because all of those things that are potentially preventing from people from taking the leap, we solved that problem. And there was the thought of like, all right, do we just sort of set up shop as like a boutique and tack on to Kickstarter, or do we just launch our own platform? And with
Right.
my background of like having launched a platform before, I was like, let's just launch the platform. So the decision was made. We started doing, market research and putting together a team and like really, took about a year, 11 months to a year from like when we had like our first conversations to when we had a live platform and we ran our first project,
Amazing. Amazing.
which we
It's
don't,
yeah.
yeah, which we don't talk about that project, but we'll talk about all the other projects.
Like the Bruno of your projects.
Oh, we don't talk about Bruno.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
It,
Just, that project is in the crawl space. That's we don't have to.
it was just Murphy's Law on that project. Anything that can go wrong went wrong. Like, we cut our teeth super early on,
Yeah.
learned a lot of lessons super early on. If there's like a silver lining, that's it. Like we got a lot of the bad stuff out of the way, but it was still pandemic times. It was still, like freight and shipping
Oh.
delays, from like the port of Long Beach and just like international shipments. Like everything was a mess, man. Like
Oh, and
we,
that, I mean, post there was a paper crisis. There was every kind of
yes,
supply chain issue. There was, forget trying to
everything.
get something from a boat from overseas, like from Asia. Forget it. Like just it's somewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll come in someday. Yeah.
And trying to get into the queue for a printer because there were paper shortages. I forgot about that. But
Yeah.
then we had, a fulfillment partner that wasn't the greatest that we wound up, having to switch out eventually. So it was just like a cluster. It was like the ultimate cluster. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Well, so I mean, it's interesting to me. Hearing you talk about it, it feels like it was just like one step in front of the other. It was never a moment. It was like oh, here's a sector I need to be in. But I find it interesting that this is the second of your startups, and in both times you're entering a pretty crowded marketplace, right? With a very well defined market leader, right? That you're going to try and chip away at.
yeah.
So that's again, it's two in a row. So, do you? Is there something about that sort of David and Goliath thing that like gets you going? Is that you find juice there? Is there some larger piece of this that you're like that makes sense? For to your mind.
I'll tell you this. I started Comic Blitz because that's what I wanted to do. It was kind of that simple. Like I had my mind set on that. We didn't solve a problem for anybody.
Right.
Like, but forming Zoop and providing this full service solution to us was enough of a differentiator. And we thought that we could capture more of the market as opposed to just taking from the existing market, that we could actually help expand the market because we're lowering that barrier to entry for people to utilize crowdfunding. So I think that this time we felt we were solving a problem.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter that there was an established market leader. We saw that as a good thing, as like, oh, this is a growth industry. There's room here, for more players. And, even if we capture, you know, and this isn't something that you should do as an entrepreneur, but like, when you say like, even if we capture like 1% of sales, I think like Kickstarter was doing like $700 million a year or something like that. And we're like, well, if we could do 7 million a year, like we're good. Like,
It's fine.
yeah, we got a business, and so it was like those rationales of like, we're solving problems for people. That's number one. But number two, it's a growth industry, and you'll see, like, it's been 3 years or so, but now there's other competitors out there, not just in the world of comics, but like there's in other categories that are all chipping away at the heels of Kickstarter now. It's this phenomenon basically called like the segmentation of like this large industry. So like think of like eBay, for example. Um, Companies come in and they segment eBay. So you have StockX, right, where you could like
Right.
do auctions for shoes and sneakers. You have Shortbox, where you could do your auctions for comics. Like,
Right.
so when a company grows so large and they lose focus on a certain category, now they're just like the overall place to go for all things. That's when you start seeing that segmentation of companies like ourselves, or a company like GameFound, or even like BackerKit coming in and trying to steal market share, but also grow the overall market.
You're right. Yeah, it's interesting, especially invoking the backer kit of it. Like, they seemingly went, the path that you debated going. Do we become a service add-on, and then grow the mark company that way? And now they're to a place where they're trying to, do what they
Yeah.
can to eat as much of Kickstarter's lunch as they can. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I don't really know, like I don't have inside information on that, but it's a
yeah.
really funny thing because they tacked on, they essentially have like the same like backer list as Kickstarter,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, which definitely gives them a leg up, like in competing head to head with Kickstarter. They
Right.
still don't provide the services that we provide, although we provide the services that they provide. So,
Yeah.
like what they do, we also do, but we do more. So that's the thing is like, if you want, if you're a creator and you want it easy, you come to us because like I said, we're that built-in team. We're the built-in support. You go to BackerKit or you go to Kickstarter, generally there's no support. There's no one to like actually like talk to and strategize with, ask questions, and like no one that has your back. It's on you to promote it all on your own, unless you're smart enough to beat the algorithm, and then you get a Project We Love badge, which gets you 2 days featured on the homepage. But then that's it for like the rest of your campaign. So
Yeah.
with us, I like to say, you know, you get like 15 to 20% of your backers will come directly from Kickstarter. We provide that same amount of backers that are coming from Zoop. The difference is they do it passively, we do it aggressively. We're out
Right.
there on social media, we're doing email marketing, we're booking interviews on podcasts, on YouTube shows. So you're not doing all these things by yourself. It's not 100% on you. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean that you do zero work. Like you still have to tap into your own core, your own fan base. You bring your crowd to crowdfunding, and we'll ice the cake that you bring.
Well pitched. So tell me, who's the? So tell me about the success stories. You guys have been at this for a minute.
I mean, the first big one that we did that kind of put us on the map for a lot of people was the John Paul Leon. John Paul Leon was an artist that passed away a few years ago. He had a creator-owned book called The Wintermen. When he passed away, his friends Tommy Lee Edwards and Bernard Chang and Scott Dunbier wanted to put together an artist edition for The Wintermen. They wanted to crowdfund it, but none of them wanted to run the campaign. None of them wanted to take care of fulfillment and printing. So, with Eric, having worked at IDW with Scott, it was a phone call, and we, that was a huge campaign for us. We were only around for like 3 or 4 months when that campaign came out. So that put us on the map. We did another one with Scott called Comics for Ukraine, which was a benefit anthology when the war in Ukraine broke out to benefit people who were displaced by the war. Cover by Alex Ross, other covers by Bill Sienkiewicz, Art Adams, Dave Johnson, contributions by Walter and Louise Simonson, Stan Sakai, Billy Tucci, Joe Jusko, this like murderer's row of legends in the comics industry. and these are two like six-figure campaigns for us. So those are two big ones. The one that has the record for us still is Nick Pitara's Axe Wielder John. Um, so that was another like huge campaign for us, and Nick is so kind and continues to talk us up all the time, which is very much appreciated. We've done successful campaigns for Howard Chaykin, for Dan Panosian, for Jorge Molina, with the Jack Kirby Museum, actually. So this is the first ever Jack Kirby crowdfunding campaign that we ran on Zoop a few months ago. We've done campaigns with Paul Cornell. We're on our second campaign with Paul Cornell. Ron Mars and Andy Lanning was one of our first campaigns as well. We have something interesting that's running right now, and I'm sure I'm leaving people out, and I don't mean to, to leave anyone out of this list of projects that we're super proud of. Full Tilt by Jason Copeland, Faceless in the Family by Matt Lesniewski that got picked up by Oni Press and is now coming out in single issues as well. And one that we have live right now is with Vault Comics. And this is not a crowdfunding campaign. We've called this a crowd building campaign, meaning the goal here was not like a financial goal or to make money. But Vault had this initiative where they were sending out free copies of first issues to comic shops. Right? There's articles about them, doing like 100,000 copies to comic shops. And we started talking about like, well, how do we do this direct to consumer? How do we do this digitally? How do we, increase our reach? And we came up with crowd building, which was essentially anyone who signs up and gives their email gets a free copy of issue number 1 of Barbaric Born in Blood. And then if there are other items that you wish to purchase, cool, you can, and we'll ship them to you. So on the campaign page, there's a free comic. All you have to do is, sign up, put in your email address. You'll get a free PDF of Barbaric. Hopefully you like it and become a fan and a customer of Barbaric and Vault. But not only that, the more people that sign up, the more free perks get unlocked. So this is a community building type of thing. So at 200 people, we unlocked, a freebie. At 250 people, we unlocked another item. At 300 people who are backing this campaign, and so on and so on. So it's you come, but also if you spread the word, everybody's going to get more free stuff. So
that's awesome. It's interesting. I've been talking to people a lot lately about crowdfunding and about what its place is in the ecosystem, and where I seem to fall, and I built my built my career on the direct market, on the comic shops, right? And so much of what I've done has been based around those guys, and I've thought really deeply about like how do they fit in this ecosystem. And Berserker, I always use as an example of a campaign that really built a market for the direct market, right? You don't see that. I mean, it was a massive seller into the direct market, and I don't think you see that. I don't think there's anything to give substance to the idea that Keanu Reeves alone would have sold that book. Because, he's kind of Keanu Reeves. He does get to pitch, but I don't think he gets as excited. I don't think he goes on the late night talk shows if he's not like, just because his book is going to comic shops. We've seen plenty of celebrities do this. So where I've landed is for publishing and for creators that the role of crowdfunding in that ecosystem is that initial building of the audience. It's so difficult to like get people interested in this brand new book or this brand new creator or this brand new idea, and you always have to have some sort of base audience to begin with, and that's why I think it's really interesting that those guys at Vault, I love how much they're experimenting. They are trying everything, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And
I think crowdfunding in general, it can validate a title. It can validate a creator. I think more and more frequently you see titles that originate on crowdfunding get picked up by a publisher because, from a publisher's perspective, it's a finished book. It's a lot easier to take something that's already done as opposed to, having to pay advances and have an editor come in and schedule and, meeting deadlines and actually working on the book. You have a finished product that sold to a few hundred people, and then the direct market is actually a different market than the people who are coming to crowdfunding. So if you have a completed project from crowdfunding, I think it makes a whole lot of sense to try to get it with a publisher. for another bite at the apple.
Well, and I think it's also, it's not even just, I think there's still so much of that apple left. I mean,
Yeah.
what is biggest, the biggest campaign is Zoop, as far as number of customers, supporters. I'm not sure you guys what you used for the talking about them, but
Yeah.
what is that number? Biggest campaign
Probably.
you've done so many?
So the biggest one that we've done, backer wise, is probably like 17 or 1800 people. So we
Yeah.
haven't cracked that 2000. We haven't cracked that 2000 yet. But the largest dollar amount was like 210,000.
Well, so I would say that like there's no publisher active for whom 1,700 people is the market for a book,
Yeah,
right?
no.
So the idea that this book, all it's showing you is the size of the audience, and it's going to be a very small proportion of that audience. Anyway, that's my personal TED talk on it. We don't need to go deeper into that.
I
Um,
I thought that's
yeah,
what this podcast is. I thought that's what this is for, is to get into it.
we're getting into the weeds, man. This
Yeah.
is it. I want to get deep in the weeds. Um, well, so tell me about what's going on. Right this second, you guys have a campaign going on that's not in Zoop, but is about Zoop. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, and I know I mentioned the term equity crowdfunding before. So Zoop right now, we are doing a capital raise via equity crowdfunding. It's at republic.com/Zoop. And essentially, it's a crowdfunding campaign. But when you back this, when you put money towards this campaign, that money goes towards investing in Zoop. So you're not pre-ordering a product, for example. You're actually buying shares in Zoop. So if you're a comics fan, if you're a crowdfunding fan, if you love what Zoop is doing, if you just want to support us, this is the way for our community to turn out and say, like, yeah, this is something important. This is something that we think we need, going forward. It helps us bypass VCs and angels, and we're not necessarily that kind of company. And it helps us keep control doing what we want to do instead of having to make, bottom line decisions all the time and slashing, like always having to increase revenues and slash your bottom dollars. So, like we just want to have a good company culture and continue providing services for the comics industry and beyond. I mean, you know, raising money helps us grow. It's not just something that we need to do, like to continue doing what we raising money means we get to do more of this essentially. So we have more things that are coming in Zoop. I know I mentioned to Adam earlier, and probably by the time that this comes out, maybe a little bit after, but I could say it here. So one of the things that this money is actually going to help us do is launch our e-commerce store. What does that mean? So with crowdfunding, we were just talking about bites at the apple, right? So with crowdfunding, that's one bite at the apple. Potentially going to a publisher is another bite at the apple. But realistically, like, what happens after a successful crowdfunding campaign? You want to continue selling your book, you want to continue selling your product, whatever it is. But
Right.
now, potentially, you as a creator, you have to figure out how to put up your own website. You have to run to the
Right.
post office every time an order comes in and handle that. You have to let people know about your website. So what we have going on is, because I know Kickstarter, I know all the other platforms, you can go to the campaign page and click a button and purchase whatever you want. But we're going to have a marketplace, which means discoverability, which means if you come for one thing, you could find other things. You can combine shipping on whatever you want because everything's sitting in the same warehouse. So we're not only a full service crowdfunding platform, but we're going to be that full service white glove concierge e-commerce platform as well, where we take care of all the technology, all the administrative stuff, all the promotion, all the fulfillment, all the customer support. So because e-commerce is essentially just crowdfunding, but all the time. Like,
Right.
it's all those same duties that if you're a creator that you don't want to handle, we'll take that all off your plate. And the cool thing about it is we're having conversations with publishers, we're having conversations with creators who haven't necessarily yet come to Zoop, but who have, overstock of their projects that they want to continue to sell. So it'll be a really interesting next few months to see, like how we populate this store.
Yeah, that sounds. I mean, the the promise, the pitch for crowdfunding is you help us with the money up front, and then that gives us the opportunity to do what we need to do to create this product, and then be able to sell this product after, right? That is always been kind of the pitch of crowdfunding as a platform. This idea of taking the next obvious step makes so much more sense, especially for anyone who's ever had to learn how to ship a comic book or a graphic novel to a comic book fan. It's not the same as just putting anything else in a box. You really have to know what you're doing, you know? Yeah. Yeah. I feel it. It's very, very smart. Well, so anything else that you have that is that we want to like drop here? Anything? Any other secrets we want to drop? I mean, I don't know. This might be months from now. You never know. We could hold on to this.
Well, look, I mean, aside from continuing on, doing the full service crowdfunding model,
sure,
and the e-commerce that's going to be coming soon, we have also loosely, it's not widely announced yet, but we have announced our first license. We are getting into the licensing space for deck building card games, board games, things like that. And
fascinating.
And starting in the world of comic properties, right? That's kind of like where it kind of fits into Zoop. But the thing is, Zoop was, I know that we're sort of described as like the comics crowdfunding platform, but realistically, we want to be the crowdfunding platform for all things sort of Comic-Con related. And what I mean by that is, comics, toys, games, video games, cosplay, anime, manga, whatever it is. Like, we just want to encompass anything that you would see sort of at a Comic-Con. Those are the types of projects that we want to work on. Even, standard publishing, if it's like sci-fi, fantasy, novels, things like that, bring it on, man. Like, I think that that's one of the ways that we grow is by expanding categories. So not just comics, but anything that we as geeks sort of love. And we brought on a team member who actually has a background in game design and game development, has sold some games in the past, has crowdfunded some games in the past. So we're already hard at work on this first deck builder game for a 20-year-old comic property. Not going to say exactly who it is just yet, but yeah, we think that this is going to be like a cool first step into this world. We have other licenses that we're working on those agreements right now with some similar type projects and some higher profile projects as well. So if some of those go, it's going to be a really sort of interesting time in terms of like the visibility of some of the projects that we're bringing over to Zoop. Yeah. So that's the exciting stuff. The one thing I do have to say, Adam, is when you go to republic.com/Zoop and you see our equity crowdfunding campaign, it's going to say a maximum goal of $1.24 million. So what does that maximum goal mean? That means legally that's the most that we're allowed to raise by SEC regulations. We did all of the legal paperwork and documentation to raise up to that amount of money. That is not our financial goal. It's not all or nothing. I just need to say that. So, we're at right around $100,000. We could take all of the money right now, and that's a win. So anything that comes in directly comes to support Zoop. Don't think that if we don't hit that 1.24 million that we can't collect. We are already past the threshold of what we can collect, and I just need to make that clear because most people are used to the all or nothing type of model. This is not that.
Well, this is actually a good place for me to point out that when you're friends with Jordan and he's running a campaign like this, you're very likely to get texts in the middle of the night saying, "Hey, did you back it yet?" Or wait, I haven't backed. Where's you're backing it, right? When is it happening? And the truth is, I really did think I did when I said I had, and I looked and it had not actually gone through. I don't know. It was something I was traveling, but I realized I'm not going to do it till I've had a chance to hear him pitch. So now that I've heard you pitch. You closed me. You closed me. I'm doing it.
Pick up your phone. Let's see it happen, Adam. And by the way, this is not me texting you in the middle of the night. This was you saying, "Yeah, man, I'm gonna throw in. I just have to decide, how much."
How much? Yeah.
So I let it sit for a little while, but then I followed up like, "Hey, man, you ever decide?
Don't forget to decide. Make sure that you decide. Yeah.
Decide how much you're gonna put in, buddy." And then the other thing for anybody listening is, not only do you get shares of the company, but at certain levels, starting at $250, we have exclusive comics. And of course, the more you invest, the more rare those comics get, because there's going to be fewer people
Oh,
investing at, say, $10,000 versus $250. So
right.
you could potentially have one of like five of, a metal cover or a foil variant cover. So, I mean, if you go on the campaign page, you'll see we had Des Taylor, who's a great pop slash comic book artist. He does Scarlet Couture at Titan Comics. He did a cover for us, and we have the standard cover, the black and white cover, the virgin cover, the foil variant, the metal variant. We're going to do some CGC graded books as well. So, and these are all at different price points. So you would absolutely get shares in the company, but depending on how much you invest, you could also get all of those comics, because at every successive level, you'll get the comic from the previous level as well. So not just one comic, you could wind up with like 5, 6, 7 comics.
Right. That's a good pitch. I'm with it. I'm here. What? Tell me about the campaigns that are live right now. What are you
Oh,
guys running right this second?
yeah, on Zoop right now. So I got to tell you, man, as someone who's like in, I'll consider myself in the comics industry at
I
this
do
point.
too. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, man. There's the
Yeah.
validation I needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. My next
but
question
like,
was about how you are an established member of the comics industry. So we'll get there. Yeah.
we'll get to that. But the thing is, like, you still don't like. I still don't know every creator. I'm not familiar
Sure.
with every creator's work. So
Sure.
we have a campaign that's live right now from a guy named Jimmy Broxton,
Okay.
and Jimmy is a longtime 2000 AD artist, and his campaign, I think, the funding goal, I think, was like $5,000. We're at like 13 and change. He's super pumped. He's selling commissions and sketches, and like people are really turning out for this one. But his work is gorgeous. Like
Oh
I'm
yeah.
like, how have I never seen this guy? And I'm not even. This isn't Adam. It's not subjectively gorgeous. Like it's objective. It's a fact. Like it's like
Yes.
photorealistic artwork that is just like, oh my god, how have I never seen your work before? So I'm so excited to like actually hold this book in my hands, because I think it's stunningly gorgeous in terms of the artwork. We have another one that's live right now, the art of Chad Hardin. So Chad Hardin has done many successful Kickstarter campaigns. He's a longtime artist for Harley Quinn over at DC. He's doing a bunch of like Marvel and DC covers and stuff like that right now. Um, he does a lot of stuff with Jimmy Palmiotti on Kickstarter, Paper Films over there. So we have an art book from him that's live right now, that's about to wrap up, and it's about to cross its finish line. I'm trying to think off the top of my head now. Oh, Time Breakers.
Yeah.
So, well, yeah. So we have this book called Time Breakers, that was originally put out by DC Comics, an imprint called Helix, in like 96, 97.
Yes. I do
It,
remember this book. Yeah.
it was like 5 or 6 issues, written by Rachel Pollack, drawn by
Yeah.
Chris Weston. Um, Chris Weston, another like longtime 2000 AD Judge Dredd guy, did The Filth with Grant Morrison. Just
Yeah.
announced a new
Incredible artist. Incredible.
he just announced a new book with Gerard Way over at Dark Horse. I forget the title of it, but the announcement came out. Um, Rachel Pollack unfortunately passed away recently,
Right.
and I think DC is honoring her in their Pride Month issue this year. Um, but the thing is, this book has never been collected. It ran its like 5 or 6 issues in the 90s, and it was never collected. So this is the first time it's ever going to be collected. The rights reverted back to the creators, and they're putting it out through Zoop. So it's already funded, and now everything additional, we're headed towards stretch goals. So we're dealing with Chris on this, and he's super super happy. I know that he's already got other publishers like coming to him for this. So that's just another example of like what can happen, through crowdfunding.
That's
So those are the
awesome.
ones off the top of my head. Usually I have my computer open, but we had so many technical difficulties that I have my computer closed right now. But
I
there's plenty
appreciate
more
it.
campaigns that we have live right now. There's plenty more campaigns that are coming soon. An art book by Adriana Mello, who's doing Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy over at DC. An art book by Christian Ward, who DC was just like, you want Batman? Here, take Batman. And he had his own Batman story, arc last year, that he wrote and drew. And like I said, our first licensed property is going to be coming very soon in the world of gaming. So very excited about that. Um, and plenty more. I know I'm leaving people out, and I always feel bad about it, but yeah,
It's
we have
okay.
a lot going on.
I put you on the spot there. I totally get it. Well, so I feel like I can. There's so much going on in your life. What does your work day look like? Like a typical weekday. What does that feel like in a household?
The first thing I do in the morning, lately, I wake up, I do some morning affirmations.
Nice.
I try to get in some stretching or like some sort of workout. This is legitimately to just like counterbalance the stress. No other
Mhm.
reason. That's the reason right there.
Yeah.
Um, Take my daughter to school, come home, and have my first daily meeting with my team every morning at 8:30. We have our first meeting, and then from there, lately it's about running this campaign on Republic. It's about um, handling business development for bringing new clients on board the platform. And right now, it's also about licensing content, for the games that we're doing. So, and also, I'm the one that handles all the PR and press for us. We have a marketing person, but when it comes to PR and press and getting interviews for our clients, getting coverage for our clients, yeah, that's all me too. So we also reach out to retailers. I'm crafting these emails to retailers as well, that go out. So, and as of right now, handling all the investor relations for this campaign, and it's every day is different, but it's a lot. It's a lot on a daily basis.
Do you break that up? Do you have like days that you're working on this or that? Or are you just always are you chasing the day's problems?
Um, I try to prioritize. I
Sure.
try to have like my buckets and realize like what needs to get done first. You know, I try to set my tasks accordingly for like really like I'm someone who prides myself like I don't miss deadlines. We need to do something, it gets done in time.
Yeah.
But yeah, there could be some days that go by and I'm not reaching out to clients because I have to deal with investor stuff or the campaign. There's some days where it's all client outreach or like Friday and Saturday I'll be at WonderCon, right? So that's all client related and PR and press, and we have a panel and oh, that's another one that's coming soon. We just put up the pre-launch page for Patrick Horvath. If you don't know that name, he's the creator of Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees,
Oh yeah,
which is
yeah, yeah.
basically like the hottest indie book from 2023. Um, so his follow-up, his next project after that is coming to Zoop.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Wow,
and so
that's a
so he's
big feather, right? Yeah.
I hope so. I hope it'll be a nice surprise. I think it will. I think once we get him out there to start doing like press, and people realize they put the name together with Beneath the Trees. I think that
Sure.
people will turn out for it. So yeah, he's going to be on our panel. Um, Alex Antone from Skybound, although we don't work with Skybound necessarily, but they know a thing or two about crowdfunding. So
They've been at it for a minute. All right. Well, I think we can. I wrong the Jordan Plosky is I think about as dry as we're gonna get. Um. All right. You've established. As we said earlier, I think you've established yourself as kind of you're a member of the comics industry, of the publishing industry. Like you're involved. You've been involved now in a number of different ways and have built an incredible network of people. If you had to like encapsulate, say, your goals for both the rest of your career, right? Which hopefully is going to be very, very long, and where you would like to leave or where you would like our industry to go, just kind of in general. Just forecasting out. Like, what would
oh
you
man,
like to see? What sort of change would you like to be able to create?
yeah, that's a really good question, man. Um, Well, look, I mean, I think that crowdfunding is a great tool, and once people learn more how to utilize it properly, and if you have like the proper support and infrastructure to do it, I'd like to think that we help expand this market and make it so that more and more people can come, and put their projects out, whether that is comics or whether it's something else creative. Um, I really think highly of crowdfunding as a vehicle, absolutely. It's interesting because like I'm sure you get this question all the time, Adam. It's like, well, what is the industry dying? You know, and like I never answer yes to that. I never think it is. I just think it's changing. You know, and I think that direct to consumer and e-commerce and crowdfunding are a part of that change. And you know, with more and more people shopping online, getting groceries delivered to the house, getting everything delivered to their house, you know, maybe we are positioned to be sort of part of that next evolution, you know, in the comics industry, where more and more people are turning to crowdfunding to, you know, to get their comics. Hard to tell, you know, if that happens or how long it takes for that next evolution to happen, but I hope we're a part of it.
I think that's good. I have no doubt you will be. Where
Man,
do people find Jordan in this in the digital landscape?
yeah, so right now, first and foremost, republic.com/Zoop. Give us all your monies.
It will be in the show notes. It'll be right up top, I promise.
The website where you can go and back all the creators that have projects running on Zoop is www.zoop.gg. We're not zoop.com. That's like some Brazilian tax consultant or something like that. But okay. Zoop.gg is the website. On Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, we are at We Are Zoop. So like we are Venom, we are Robin, you know.
Got it.
All those things. If you want to email us, it's hello@wearezoop.com. Yeah, that's awesome. That's where to find us.
Thank you, buddy. This has been wonderful. Thanks again for watching. Can I point out how silly it is that you've watched this entire interview and you haven't hit subscribe yet? It's weird, right? I mean, I don't want to tell you how to make your choices, but just saying. Thanks, as always, to Steph Gerk, our producer, and Anthony Militano on research. And our sincerest thanks to Jordan for making the time for this interview. Namaste, y'all.